and welcome to Get the Table, where today we will be rating wrestlers of your choosing. I'm Michael Sidgwick, joined by Michael Hamflett for this podcast. But before we get into it, if you're a fan of this sort of thing, make sure to subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and YouTube for daily wrestling podcasts, where we do this sort of thing. On occasion, we preview and review Raw, SmackDown, the show formerly known as NXT 2.0. Dynamite, Collision, pay-per-views, premium live events. We have wrestler interviews on occasion, roundtable discussions, and a roundup of the week complete with a bloody good quiz, of course, on WhatCulture. Now, there's a little game that goes around across various corners of X where you can get us at WhatCulture WWE, at M. Sidgwick, at Michael Hamflett to engage in this sort of podcast, which is sort of like in line with the Q&As that we do and various meme games that we try and adapt to podcasts. But across various corners of X, different fandoms, like actors, wrestlers, bands, all the rest of it, people want to know if, in your opinion, they are under, over, or accurately rated. So should we just get straight into it? So the first person is with this is Jimothy. No, it's not. It's Jimothy. Thank you very much for your question, and indeed everyone for contributing. It's really, really appreciated. Jimothy says, with the rumblings that he will get more of a push this year, I'm curious as to what your thoughts are on 2025 Finn Balor and whether he still has it in him to have a decent singles run. Can I go first and then you?
Yeah.
2025 Finn Balor, look, I don't think too much of, but it's an interesting... So basically, overrated if people rate him, is the quick answer there, the TLDR. Historically, I'm quite interested, and this is a little bit of a longer discussion, because Prince Devitt did what, it's sort of the modern wrestler template, or at least the best version of it, and increasingly with these AEW to WWE jumps, he's kind of being yet more influential still than he already was. He has his legacy years, his artistic years, and then let's go to the Fed and make some money, because wrestlers have a shorter career than most, and get that retirement fund in early. Historically, it's funny. Prince Devitt, yes, it wasn't his idea to lead the Bullet Club. He was booked to do something like it. So it's not as if he's got this great creative force, even though he's amazing in the role, like really, really amazing in the role. And obviously a lot of his input went into it when it finally became this thing. So it's not like he's a trailblazer as much as, sometimes he might get that rap by being the first member of basically a stable that was booked by New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Yeah.
In ring, he was sensational before he went to WWE, quite frankly. Not so amazing where you think of the all-time best matches ever, and his matches are anywhere near the top 50 or top 100.
Yeah.
Not even a top 100 for me. Maybe that tag with the Golden Lovers in Apollo 55, maybe that would crack 100, but certainly, I'm not trying to downplay it. I'm just saying in terms of how good is he really. I will give him all the credit in the world for, in the 21st century, drawing earnest heat. And even the demon thing, inventive. It should have been more. It had so much more potential than was ultimately realized. It's still kind of it's still like Muto Muta. It's still that fully alter ego stuff. It's clever that he's had the idea, because really I think more wrestlers should have explored it. I don't know. I think if it's anything, probably overrated for Devitt / Finn Balor for me.
Yeah, it's easier to answer, isn't it, if it's a 2025 question, as has been phrased here, because anyone rooting for a 2025 push for Finn Balor, this is a caveat for everyone, with the greatest respect to everybody that bumps for a living. Can we say that now? Just cover it. We're just speaking as critics and as fans of what we like and what we don't like when we're talking about everybody here.
Balor's had loads of great matches. I'm not saying he hasn't.
But ultimately, the people calling for Balor's push in 2025, if and when the Judgment Day split up, are just Finn Balor fans dating back to whenever they got into Finn Balor.
And that's absolutely fine.
And we all do that as well. There'll be favourites that you have. I'm loyal to a fault to a bunch of wrestlers, but most fans have their favourites that they're still fighting for this title years and years and years past the prime. And I think it's fair to say that Finn Balor is past his prime. So in that extent, completely agree. Overrated. as a career, and I think with wrestlers with long enough careers, we're kind of assessing that here as well. I would probably have to still lean overrated. I wish...
Sorry, and I've stepped on your dick there when you're trying to collect yourself. It all depends on who rates, you know?
Of course,
and
yeah.
that'll probably get, you know...
Yeah, like this is sort of... We're asking within the bubble questions about the bubble, because who knows what people think of anybody ultimately. You can suggest that like the majority of the people think that John Cena...
There's bubbles within bubbles.
Bubbles within bubbles. It's just bubbles all the way at the top.
It's Bubble City.
Like a battle. No, Finn Balor, I wish... My great regret for him in WWE was right when...
I am listening. I'm actually setting something up for the next one, though.
Right when the matches might have still been there, and I would say that would have been 2014 to 2016 NXT. I wish then he'd either been called up and the demon and the real heart of that character had been explored in a more interesting way than ultimately how it was. The demon was used to sell figures. The demon was used when Finn Balor was at the end of a feuad that he was going to win that match, because up until the Roman Reigns dead fish match, the demon was unbeatable. I would have liked to have seen Finn Balor when he could still gew at what I believe to be his top-ish level, NXT golden years, with that demon character that took from him. I think there were so many more psychologically interesting matches of Finn Balor, the human being, explaining, yes, he can be the demon, but do you realise what that does to him? Do you realise that it's actually a sacrifice to have to become the demon? I don't want to. This is not just a bonus level. I'm not supersonic here. This is hurting me to be this character, but you've kind of forced me to sort of like not just cover myself in the paint, but just embody the role, and it does something to me. You know, it's supernatural, but only supernatural adjacent, because it is physically. It's like an injury almost. It chips away at him. In the months after he's been the demon, you can see that he's still trying to recover from it. I wish there was a sophisticated company that could have explored that while he was still at his peak, and I think he might have left a more interesting catalogue of matches behind. I think the NXT Golden Era matches were, as you say, like good, rarely approaching great. I think the most memorable...
Still like really scintillating junior heavyweight stuff.
I think, I think the most memorable stuff he did outside of New Japan was...
Has to be NXT for me.
But it's a short list. Was probably the first couple of appearances of the Demon, because the character just overwhelmed everything around it. And when Samoa Joe accidentally, like the head getting split open, and how that changed that like that became like dynamic in a way that Joe and Finn never were, because now somebody's bleeding half out the head. So it just never quite married. The perfection of that character and his in-ring peak never quite came together.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, Esma. So I can't pronounce the whole thing. I'm terrible. I am swine. But you ask, Randy Orton. I think he's the laziest and most overrated wrestler of the last 15 years. He was great in his early years, maybe up to 2011 or something. But since then, who can mention 5 great Randy Orton matches? A lot of people think he's really overrated. A lot of people think he's perfectly rated as this in-ring legend promoted by WWE. I honestly think Randy Orton, no matter who you speak to, is amongst the most overrated professional wrestlers of all time. Like, if you look at who's had that catalogue and that push and those title reigns, it's absurd how much they gave him for what they got in return. Never a great draw. Mark Henry kind of owned him in 2011 in that regard. His best match was 21 years ago. Never, ever did anything after that Jack match that was remotely on that level. When it was his turn to sort of be somebody else's Mick Foley, he just couldn't do it. Honestly, like, Randy Orton is... There's a Miles Davis quote, right? And I'm paraphrasing and I'm butchering it. But he says something like, there's only so many notes, there's only so many combinations of notes, so much of jazz, so much of music. It's the attitude of the mother who's playing it as opposed to the actual melody and all the rest of it. Randy Orton has kind of got, like, so handsome. He's got that prick energy. He carries himself like a star. He's got the attitude of a great wrestler, but he's Ethan Page. He's probably sharper. He's probably better than Ethan Page. I just find him in that bland category for me. And he's just, the amount of just matches that he's just had that aren't special is staggering.
Yeah. Maybe there'll be somebody as we go down this list that I'll have to change this for. But off the top of my head, I wouldn't even have him in the short list. I'd have him in the top of it. I think he's the most overrated wrestler ever. I think it's like you mentioned.
Triple H had 2000.
Yeah.
Undertaker had the streak matches.
I'm looking for any extended runs like that from Randy Orton, and I've never seen it, and I've watched all of it. The thing with Randy Orton, when you mentioned about him not being a draw, not only was he, and it's unfair to say that nobody's ever bought a ticket to see Randy Orton. Obviously, when you're the pushed...
Sean Spears with a attitude.
When you're the pushed top star of WWE, people will buy tickets to see you, and Randy Orton, countless times, has been the pushed top star of WWE. But at the same time, he's not been. Because there was always a John Cena, there was always a Dave Bautista, there was always
didn't offer refunds when Orton couldn't make the show.
No, exactly. And there were, we're seeing in 2025, John Cena is still drawing houses. WrestleNomics were there to just outright say it. Like, he's still a man at the box office. Like, Cody Rhodes is coming close, Roman Reigns has done things, but look at John Cena in 2025, no less, when nobody really knows what they're buying other than the vision of the man. Randy Orton was never that, even at his peak, and it's hard to discern what his peak is. I would argue his peak is now, because if nothing else, when you stick around ages, there's a certain affection, and he's massive. I quite like seeing how huge he is. It's like, this is a new Randy Orton to look at. Visually, he's a little bit different than what he's ever been. Randy Orton, for me...
He's just sort of swelled.
Yeah. Randy Orton, for me, is what ultimately happened to wrestling writ large, which is good became so normalised that good stopped feeling like good. Randy Orton's had God knows how many just fine matches. But like back when he was having just fine matches, there were standards out there that were destroying those fine matches. Like, it's not like now where it's really hard to find great because like really, really good is omnipresent. You're going to get those every single week in North American TV wrestling. Randy Orton was doing it. There was loads of other ways to find great wrestling, and he never seemed to try and do that.
Yeah.
I used to hold it. We've talked about this at length on various other podcasts. Used to do my head in that wrestlers would bollock you for not getting Randy Orton when they would fail to understand that because they do nothing at the house show with Randy Orton, like, we are supposed to feel something.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's great that if a match with Randy Orton is saving you bumping on your back or is allowing him to slither around like a snake and thus you just lie there and wait to be RKO'd, that you're not absorbing the injuries you might do. I think that's tremendous for a wrestler.
I don't care.
But they have to understand where there's a disconnect between what they're feeling in their job and what we're feeling as a customer. And that's what we still are ultimately.
Absolutely. Next one, and I've got a game to play with this because it feeds into my assessment, right? This is from Daft Dad. It's Adam Wilborn. It's Daft Dad 2 on X / Twitter. Edge, overrated for me, right? So my thing with Edge is that the 2000s are such a weird and largely awful decade in that if you had anything about you or staying power, it was harder than ever to be a top star because, the boom had gone bust and it wasn't sort of everyone's really over. But if you had loads of talent, you were just going to be in those roles forever because developmental, which was bubbling under the surface of the main roster, was such a systemic farce that you had real no competition. And that's why you had Randy Orton versus Triple H for 2 years and all the rest of it. And what happened as well is, like, particularly in the late 2000s, ROH was sort of fading as this great industry-changing force. And Gabe did what a lot of bookers do, and every booker does, in fact, and he's just sort of like, you've done all your stuff and you're just doing it again, but to excess. Like the Japanese scene still wasn't really in, like, it was still in a bad place. And then the global standard had kind of dropped, and 2009 was particularly brutal.
It's time to play the game! Time to play the game! Ha 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 ha!
Who won the Lou Tez Award from the Wrestling Observer newsletter for, like, Wrestler of the Year? And that's, I believe, is that in-ring? It's, like, specific?
Yeah.
I know most outstanding wrestler.
Most outstanding, what, in 2009?
Well, right. Danielson won it for most outstanding, right? But who won like the most valuable, which does incorporate in-ring work? Like Jey Uso's not winning the Lutez, even if he main events, you know? Yeah. So it's a bit of a... Who wins Wrestler of the Year for like drawing power and in-ring? Like who's the composite best as opposed to just the best in the ring? 2009 Wrestling Observer Newsletter.
God, that's so difficult. A name will pop into my head, then there's an immediate reason to chalk him off. I'll tell you my little process there. I went like, Kurt Angle was an unreal form in TNA, but TNA was TNA, so you have to chalk him off. Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker were troublingly still so much at the top of their game that like, it was kind of embarrassing the wrestlers underneath them. John Cena was not good. But Drew, you know, but like, wasn't good. Is the answer Edge for the benefit of this conversation?
No, but it kind of still speaks to my point about Edge and his peak and what it really means.
WWE wrestling 2009.
Yeah. You might kick yourself because he was good. He was obviously good. He's getting this award. Really good, really good.
That's really good in 2009. Jeff Hardy.
Chris Jericho, having won it for the second consecutive year. 2008, 2009, Chris Jericho is your... I don't know why he's... I mean, probably because it's in the Observer, but I don't know why he's winning that sort of like most valuable, like all-rounder sort of gimmick.
Jericho really became something, and that was powered by him.
Yeah. Like that's the standard at which Edge was operating at or near his peak. And
they had to fight guest hosts every week.
Yeah.
That Jericho kind of carried Raw, actually. Yeah.
So with Edge... is a historical all-timer. First of all, his television drawing record after 2006, dire. And like, because it's WWE and because it was Monopoly years WWE, like loads of wrestling fans who are younger than me will have the most intense, fond memories of something like Edge versus John Cena as their program, you know? So I get it. And I understand to a degree how over Edge is in buildings. Edge's best catalog. Does it touch Hangman Page's? Absolutely not. It's just WWE was the only mainstream game in town, so that's going to be more iconic than Hangman Page's weeklies or Darby Allin's weeklies, you know? Edge, even at the time, I'm like, he's done what he's clever. He was clever. Did well to wrestle to his lanky frame and be that counter person, but I think Jay White's better than Edge. I don't think much of Jay White really in terms of an all-time great.
Again, a lot of this comes down to the perception of what you believe people think of Edge or Cope. I would personally put him as accurately rated, was where he would sit for me, because he's a peaks and troughs guy. I think the comeback in 2020, with a bit 5 years of reflection now, and it has been a 5-year comeback, and this 5 years has been peaks and troughs, let alone his whole career.
This has done bad damage to him, I think.
I disagree. I think this is...
No, he was like, if you look at... I don't know.
Like, because he was seen as a guy that was never going to come back, right? So, like, that was always going to get the incredible reaction it drew. But I think the further we move away from that, the more people just have fondness for it rather than thinking, you know what, he's done away with that moment because this run was rubbish or that run didn't draw or anything like that. I think people are already able to just be like, the things I felt for that, I'm not speaking for me personally, but the things I felt for that if you're an Edge guy, which is something that you're going to take with you forever and ever and ever. And there's only so many wrestlers that can make people feel that way. Yeah. Like that puts him in like a higher bracket. And I can say that as somebody that also doesn't necessarily feel a lot for his work. I need to be surprised when I'm loving an Edge match rather than going in expecting to love one. He's that kind of, but he can do that. He is capable of that.
The Big Bill match on Collision recently was great.
What is happening at the moment? Very good. What is happening in the moment in AEW is, I think, already, maybe this is a Cope thing. Maybe this is an Edge thing. I think he has this innate ability to make people forget that they loved him because his TNT run was kind of critically acclaimed. Like, there was a point in which he was a real benefit to the AEW roster and nobody kind of saw that coming. It was like another WWE signing, taken too far, whatever. There are what feels like an equal number of pros and cons to Edge from beginning of career to present day, injuries included, major comebacks, TLCs, non-drawing, like disastrous runs, injuries, the lot. I think he's about as 50-50 as a wrestler as you can get. And the people that love him, I totally get why. The people that would look at him as a kind of persistent
cringe
failure.
lord.
Cringe lord, kind of persistent failure, bit of a loser. I get it as well. Accurately rated for me.
Okay. We've got a couple of like similar requests. One of which was from Dell, is what I'm looking at anyway. Ken Shamrock. Right. For me, it's always like, I think he's overrated. But and I don't think many people particularly rate Ken Shamrock as a wrestler or an attraction or whatever. But at the same time, right, and you'll know this experience as keenly as I do, being like a early internet wrestling fan, because we're showing our age. We're still in our 30s. Fact. All in our 30s. The amount of times someone would just make up, just dream up on a message board. I heard Shamrock's coming back. He never was. It was just, to be fair, Dave would have to say, report to Shamrock coming back. Maybe, or they're taking a look at him, or he must have been in regular contact with WWE years after. He's just like, because there was always especially when WWE's business was declining, like a guy who people liked and was a memorable attitude era dude.
First TNA champion.
Yeah.
Value.
You know, like the amount of times people were getting hyped up for Shamrock to come back, or how his sort of legend, if you like, is endured because he's just so memorable.
Mm-hmm.
But I can name a good Ken Shamrock match. That isn't the Lion's Den.
Oh, yeah, no, I liked a lot of his stuff, but it wasn't like it was a work rate heavy era in which he was doing it.
Yeah.
Ken Shamrock was a great wrestler for the time. And we know that, like, you know, the fact that he was coming from the UFC was a work. There's pancreas, and he had a wrestling background, but we're talking, I guess, specifically of his 1997 and 1999 WWE run, because it's that Shamrock that people pine for.
Yeah.
He didn't rack up the great matches, but he was a very good.
Whenever they gave him time, it was always like,
yeah,
what are we doing here?
There was a few times where you kind of realised that
the Undertaker, you had and the Undertaker was like, I can do that.
Yeah, they were trying to do like arm lock reversals and stuff. Yeah. Hey, the dead man's got a bit about him. Like, people look at the Vader one, he kind of had a bit of a near Turcarino with Sean at Degeneration X in Your House, where Sean told him to call the spots as loud as he wanted. So there's a few little, speak up, Ken, the man that screams as part of his character. What can possibly go wrong? Yeah, that's Sean.
Put the balls on him to do that to Shamrock.
No.
Could have torn him limb from limb.
It was December 97, man. He probably never felt more untouchable.
Yeah.
They've just screwed Brett. What are you going to do about it? Speak up, Ken. Oh my God, he's killed Kenny.
Yeah.
It was a series of very, very fun moments, as was a lot of the case in the Attitude Era over matches. And that's going to carry weight still does now, doesn't it? We can deny the impact of the Attitude Era. We can finally, seemingly, move on from it a bit when we talk about our wrestling nostalgia. There's even a version of WWE that has supplanted it so that you can be nostalgic about that in 10 years rather than the Attitude Era, and yet it will persist in people's memories. We are on our 30s, fact. But for those people experiencing it in the teenage years, there's a real tethering to much of the Attitude Era. Billy Gunn has probably still got a job on wrestling television because of the Attitude Era.
That makes me sick to my stomach, GR.
Would anybody be calling for Ken Shamrock to have a persistent role that Billy Gunn has if he was around all the time? They'd probably want him gone too, I think. But again, I don't think he's necessarily championed. I just think there's a loud subsection of people that would also act. Is the Undertaker still in it?
Yeah.
I love that Ken Shamrock, me.
No.
Yeah.
So here's one that's probably
more slightly overrated, but only slightly.
Only slightly. Here's an interesting one, and I'm going to throw it to you immediately. You had an absolutely fantastic take. The good thing about, if you're into critical analysis and all the rest of it, I try to be this person, and I seek it out because it's like, I want you to put my finger on it. I'm not particularly clever with, like, film critique or, like, film techniques or cinema. I go to critics for that reason in that field. Like, put my finger on it. Like, that's why I didn't really think it was great or whatever. You had a fabulous take about, and this is CL's request, Danny Garcia. I found his growth stunting a lot of late from being a real favorite of mine. Just think he has fallen by the wayside. Can I have your take on Daniel Garcia
Remind
in
me,
the
please?
office? Well, I'll just put the words in your mouth.
Okay.
We were having this chat.
Put my finger on my finger.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll put your finger on your finger.
Thank you very much.
I mean, everyone knows that expression.
We all say it.
Everyone says it. You had a great take, and here's the take. We were talking about Daniel Garcia across the desk.
We don't do bits, by the way.
Yeah, no.
So we're not putting fingers on bits.
No, we were talking about Garcia for this exact purpose of like, how good is he really?
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you have to ask the question to begin with is like, there's something wrong here.
Mm-hmm.
And you have this great take of, he aspires to be that Shibata, Bryan Danielson, boots and trunks, my expert craft. And I do think there are times he's approached brilliance in the ring, usually when there's a brilliant opponent in there, admittedly. And he could be it one day, maybe. But he aspires to be that aura-drenched, ultra-credible, don't really need to promo or be in these crazed episodic TV angles. I can let my impeccable technique do the talking. He doesn't have that aura. He doesn't have that. Like, Shibata was an MMA failure, but in wrestling, that has this weird effect of, he's still harder than wrestlers, you know? So Shibata had that aura, and he carried himself, and he hit really hard. Danielson, because he's just headbutting people, he's got this grand catalogue of hour-long ROH matches where he's like this ultimate stamina machine, and he's just really violent, and he's like revered. Daniel Garcia wears that, doesn't have it.
Yeah, it hit me.
So I think he's kind of overrated. Maybe he needs more years to be this wrestler.
I think that's it. I think it hit me when he reverted back to this sort of like contemporary version of Red Death, away from Dancing Danny and his wacky trousers and the Jericho like stuff, brackets general. It hit me when he reverted back to that, and that was very much a kind of old forum money, just like the wrestlers wrestle, reversion that was apparently going to like save Daniel Garcia as this on-screen character, and it hasn't really.
Yeah,
the matches.
He's not that over. He gets them in the buildings.
Yeah, like, and
this push should make more over, I think.
This is not to justify the Jericho mindset of, you got to give him a dance, kid. You got to give him something to mimic and imitate and pop for, because the moves ain't going to be it. Because I would argue once upon a time the moves were it.
He's amazing is that sort of error-prone rookie.
Yeah.
It's the deliberate error-prone rookie.
And then the gambles
character
he takes. The first time he used the Dragon Tamer and he's snapping back on it. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, that's a move that's going to get you over. That's like, I'm going to like scream every time you do that. And now I know who it's linked to, in particular, your influences and stuff. There was so much interesting about that Daniel Garcia character, but before he was able to finish, timing's a lot in wrestling as well, before he was able to fully finish fleshing that character out, something else was given to him.
Yeah.
And then it was given to him at the wrong time, because as we talked about at the time, you cannot do this anti-sports entertainment joke anymore, because people are actually quite enjoying WWE again. That was unlucky timing. So then he stuck with this. So then he finally gets his old gimmick back. But it's happened when one of the few holdovers from the sports entertainment thing was this dance deal that he liked, and the exploration, if you want to call it that, of Daniel Garcia : Shagger. That actually gathered a bit of traction, and now it's like Shagger or serious Street Fighter, and now you're left with this grey area of neither.
Yeah.
And the matches aren't speaking loud enough to sort of just say, stop what you're doing and watch a Daniel Garcia wrestling match.
Yeah.
We're a long way from that.
He's in like,
it's a shame.
Kind of a small details guy. I like how he'll take a lariat and bump awkwardly on his shoulder and not just do the basic back, which has seen that a million times, or that sort of, that backflip bump. Like, he'll make it look deliberately ugly. He'll do these little details that makes his matches feel like these organic, felt battles.
Yeah.
So Garcia, I love the error prone. He did it on purpose. He'd go on Twitter and go, I lost that match for this reason. He was like, I want to describe him as the anti-get yosh in wrestler. It was so refreshing.
Yeah.
He's wrestled to his age a lot, and I think that's really impressive and thoughtful for a young wrestler, especially on the TV. It's quite risky and bold. And he's had his like sort of it's like quasi-worked young lion run, where it's like, he was meant to be this sort of like aimless guy doing a failed excursion in the JAS, but it was also quite true at the same time. I thought that was really interesting. The problem now is that he's jumped to, right, well, I've had I've rectified the mistakes on my in-ring game. I can do the submissions properly. I've had my growing pains run, and now I'm just a fully formed Daniel Garcia. And I can't take that seriously because he isn't yet.
He's not, is he?
No.
It's the Irish last kicker John Cena thing, isn't it? Like, who are you? Who actually is Daniel Garcia right now? And I don't think his matches or this character really trying to answer that question. I think it's a big case that you get in wrestling in like 2025 of the action will do the talking. and it's not everybody gets the benefit of that, and Daniel Garcia certainly doesn't.
Maybe if it's still Danielson at the top of the company and they didn't sign, Ospreay.
Yeah.
And
a lot falls on signing Ospreay. A lot. We said it then, and it's still the case now.
Maybe like sort of the tone of the company would have changed, but I think people just like Will Ospreay a lot and like his matches and style a lot, and a lot of other stuff to a modern AEW audience just doesn't hit.
Yeah,
we'll see. Right, this one's interesting because it's always a little bit interesting when you've got a little bit of sacred cows to slaughter. Jared Douglas asks about Vader and or Bam Bam Bigelow. Let's do both. Vader, I think, if anything, is underrated. Vader was able to convey the same sense of in-ring danger and this just sheer plight on behalf of his opponents, even when you're years removed from these matches actually happening, and those involved were obviously fine and flourished. You watch him against Foley and you think, oh my God, he's dead. And you watch him against Sting and just think, Jesus Christ, Sting is getting his ass kicked in here. He was able to convey, without that insane amateur wrestling background or the UFC run that just completely made his aura magnetic, that same level of in-ring danger as Brock Lesnar, but on a full-time basis. I think Vader was amazing. Bam Bam, and there's nothing wrong with this, it's pro wrestling. His look went so far. Physically, all the gifts in the world. He never scared me in the ring as much as Vader did. And I don't think he quite had the level of craft and psychology to put these great dramatic matches together, and his catalog isn't amazing. Great look, great for his time. I don't think Bam Bam was one of the best big men because Vader could go like 20 minutes and tell a story in there as well. I think he was underrated for his mind.
Yeah, this is definitely going to veer closer to personal taste. I think both are overrated. Personally, I do. For different reasons, though. And I understand why you would couple them together, not just because they were a team, but they're both kind of held aloft as two of the best working big men, sort of thing. Vader was a better storyteller than Bigelow. I've watched a lot of Bam Bam Bigelow recently, as well as just generally, because he's a fun wrestler to look at.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of opponents.
Mostly a fun wrestler to watch as well.
Yeah, like a lot of opponents that he wrestled are the wrestlers I choose to watch a lot.
Spring Stampede 1999.
Like the runs.
That match with Hack is just so great.
But this was the thing, right? What he probably doesn't get enough credit for is how what he could do, Bam Bam Bigelow, was adjust to the tone of the promotion he worked for. So if you see his stuff in Japan and how it differs from 80s WWF as a babyface, 90s WWF as a heel, and then ECW, and then WCW as a heel. Like, it's a different Bam Bam Bigelow, so I kind of admire him being able to adapt to the situation he's in and change his working style. But what I've gathered from like the Bigelow I've watched in the last couple of years, I don't feel happy saying this as well, he doesn't put much in the right place. It's amazing that he can fly off the top rope.
Yeah.
I love his little handstand and his cartwheel and stuff like that, but
it's like him trivializing stuff.
The when's all wrong. The when is all wrong with Bigelow. Honestly, the flying headbutt as a finisher is about the only thing he gets right, and half the time you watch a lot of Bigelow.
It's all when in wrestling as well.
He's dropping it in the middle. Yeah. And like a lot of it is like, right, he's going to go back to headbutt in the back for a bit, headbutt in that lower back, and he's a big guy, so he wants to get his wind or whatever. But I just think like the storytelling in a Bigelow match is way more basic than people remember, because they're picturing him flying through the air.
Yeah.
And rightfully so, by the way, they're picturing what an achievement the Lawrence Taylor match was.
Yeah.
Like only certain wrestlers can show as much ace as Bigelow did for a guy with a forearm, a footballer with a forearm that was gassed in a minute. That's really impressive. But that's like kind of, is this an unfair criticism? That's a bit like putting Michael Nakazawa over as an all-time great because he wasn't terrible in the Bayley thing. He was trying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Vader, it's just a feeling for me. I think Vader's a completely opponent-based match guy. It needs to be with the wrestler he's facing rather than, if I'm giving a Vader compilation,
yeah,
I want it. If I'm giving a Sting Vader compilation, I want it.
All right.
Who else do I put on the other side of that Vader thing with? I don't know. But that's the point, I guess. Like, it's all about who he's in there with for me rather than... I love Flair Vader from Starrcade.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome.
Awesome, but I'm watching Flair. Like, I'm watching Flair try. And I was going to say Brock Lesnar before you use him as a comparison the other way. I would say Brock did it better. Brock does it better for me in terms of what I enjoyed against a wider variety of opponents and showed more charismatically, physically than Vader did for me.
You had a better, I'm amazing at this, and you cannot do a thing about it. Smug face. I'll give him that.
But I fully acknowledge that's maybe a taste thing as well. Because I do sense a nervousness about slaughtering sacred cows with Vader particularly.
Just when he boxes people's ears. It's just the best. Oh, God, you can feel it. You can feel it. Jimmy Angel, MCCT, has asked, and I'm going with this one because there's been a few people, my thoughts are very, very brief. Hook, I don't think anyone rates him anymore. So maybe he's accurately rated. I don't think there's a single... I think there are people who want him to succeed, and maybe there is someone still in there, and he's marketable, and he wrestles in a way that a lot of people don't. I think he's accurately rated as someone who... Again, you don't want to feel sorry for this incredibly young guy who's much hotter and more fashionable than you are, or I am, you know? But I do. I feel sorry for him. I think he's wayward. I don't think he's in the right system, and I think he's very much accurately rated by the consensus as a young lad who's in a system that is failing him.
Yeah, you've used the word invincible about AEW's peak, and indeed really a wrestling promotion when it's on fire does feel invincible, doesn't it? Hook was a character that you absolutely unleash on the world when you're invincible, as AEW were, and think, my God, this guy's going to change the whole industry. The failure to subtly and tactfully...
Of course he's going to be the best young wrestler in the world. Yeah. AEW can do no wrong.
Their failure to subtly and tactfully not develop him, as you have to do in that situation. You have to constantly hide. To Paul Heyman ECW, that Hook character is a failure of the promotion.
Yeah.
The wrestler was always a level below.
Yeah. Should definitely go on excursion. You know what? He's a young lad. He's got all the time in the world to make his roots.
I love that. Yeah, I really pity the cold, handsome, cold-hearted, handsome devil.
Yeah, he's like so hot.
Yeah,
and so cool.
But there were definitely lists written and, like, without hyperbole, statements made about Hook's potential, and that was a victory for promotion that then ultimately became a defeat for it as well.
You've never been in a fist fight, have you?
Never. I'm scared.
I'm very scared.
Scared.
I was in 2 in primary school, 50-50 record I've got. So I'm happy with that.
Right.
I'm happy with that. 50-50.
So you're accurately rated?
Yes.
Yeah.
You hate confrontation as well, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the rules have changed. Because Kirsty has asked our opinion on how rated Bayley is, I think, over.
Who were we talking about at the start of this podcast about loyalty? Ken Shamrock loyalty, the era maybe, I can't think.
You're a loyal dude.
Yeah.
I mean, you go and watch the Grateful Dead block party in the Cribs.
That's true.
When like everyone else was like, I'll still listen to Silent Alarm, I guess, but I'm not going to buy the new stuff.
Sidge, Grateful Fed.
Yep.
The
the look on your face there was like...
And that?
The look on your face, I want to piss on your chips because you don't like condiments.
Do you know where the loyalty comes from? I think, and this does apply to music and things I like ultimately, I will give probably too many chances to people that made me feel like Bayley did once, and she did more than once. Do you know what I mean? It's not just a Sasha match. It's that incredible run, that incredible era of NXT of which Bayley was such a vital part of. You know, everybody. This isn't a hot take, is it? You know, the female John Cena and the run and how it felt at the house shows, Cena in person.
She felt like the one.
Yeah, it was a privilege.
She felt like the one.
It's a privilege to see her live in NXT because you're thinking to yourself, amazing. It's not exactly the ground floor when you're watching NXT, but thank God I've seen it here because everything after this is WrestleMania stadiums and the like. Yeah. They never materialised quite like that. So I'm always rooting for Bayley, but the loyalty is completely based in, well, somebody gave me the 10 out of 10 euphoria. So that's the same with bands, even if it's, I remember you said it the other day, it's like, you know, the albums might be just consensus 6s after that, but it's because I'm always sitting with the 10. And like, if anything, good for them for knocking out 6s because they've already given me the 10. Yeah. So I would say at this point, Bayley is, I would agree with you that she's overrated, but I think it is perhaps a bigger knock on her that she's not more overrated. I think a lot of people have not so much sold their stock in Bayley, but just settled down their expectations. Yeah. I have long stopped expecting Bayley to be used as a top star. And I also try and judge things fairly. 2024 was fairly objective evidence that she isn't a top star.
She had one of my favourite matches of 2024, to be fair.
And you still wouldn't include her in that list of your favourite wrestlers of the year, would you? The Io Sky match was there.
Yeah.
You were in person for it. And I would sign her. You know
if you're Tony Khan, I mean, you sign everyone.
No, if I'm assembling a roster,
All right,
I want to. But like,
I don't.
I'm not pushing her as a top star. Like, I think everybody, like in sort of from women's wrestling has been around Bayley in the last 10, 15 years.
They all adore her.
Adore her. Talk about how supportive she is, and like in meaningful ways as well. Training, advice, goals, help, inspiration, all that sort of stuff. Clearly, like an enormous value. WWE would be mad to get rid of her. We'll put anybody over. We'll try stuff, whatever. Not if you're looking for her as a top star, you're overrating her.
Yeah. I've got a bit of a slanted view on this. 2015 Bayley, one of my favorite wrestlers ever. She was so great. I think she's now overrated, and I think when her legacy, when she retires, will inevitably get embellished and all the rest of it. And I think she will one day be very overrated. I felt so sorry for her when it was like she was the one it's almost as much as Brian, where it's like, oh, come on, just let her be herself. It was great in NXT. She was fundamentally really mean. She was in a mean-spirited promotion. And it's like, it's Bayley. You can't really be mean-spirited with her. It's complete don't get it mismatch. WWE, Vince McMahon, main roster, and that babyface Bayley character could not have been less suited to one another. Yeah. She's had the chance in Levesque to be a really good over babyface, and she just isn't it. Mm-hmm. And I think she's had some good matches, one great match here and there. And it's just, I've seen matches of hers on SmackDown. It's like, this is so boring and heatless. And she just, even if she's not where she was physically, surely if she has that enduring, innate babyface appeal and this great sense of craft, she should be able to do it consistently, and she can't.
I can't remember if I said this on a podcast, and I maybe didn't think I wanted to at the time, but I'll say it now. Even though this other wrestler is in a rich vein of form at the moment, it hit me over the summer with their contrasting fortunes and up and downs and all the rest of it. I think Sasha and Bayley at Brooklyn's maybe my second favourite match ever. And like ever.
It's in my top 25 or something. Right? It's up there. Not my absolute, but up there.
I think it's my second favourite match ever. And I think I'm able, nearly 10 years on from it, it'll be 10 years this summer, to say that in fact, Bayley and Sasha, Mercedes Moné, are like one perfect wrestler. And I was watching this match.
That's a good take.
I was watching this match being worked into thinking I was watching two perfect wrestlers in a Hart Austin way. Because the match was as significant as Hart Austin for women's wrestling.
Yes.
But I could classify Hart and Austin as just about perfect. And I think what's happened over time is that I've seen that maybe together they are one perfect pro wrestler with all of it.
Yeah.
But just miss key components individually.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good take, that. This is a funny one that I didn't expect to get as often. I don't like Bayley's interplay with Michael Cole either. That kind of rubs the charm of this incredibly wholesome. I'm not saying she's been a carny, and if she is, she's a wrestler, it's fine. Because a lot of women adore her. Sarcastic edge she has with Michael Cole, and the fact that she would be friends with Michael Cole. Not really that wholesome and great, are we? I'm surprised this name came up as often as it did. Okay. Mark Goldberg, amongst others, has asked for Steve Blackman. I think Steve Blackman is perfectly accurately rated as someone no one thinks was great in the ring, but just enjoyed watching. Is this guy is a total badass. It doesn't really translate in the ring at all, but he just looks like someone you would want to mess with.
What's the crack like?
And the music was great.
In the Hall of Fame or something? Is it like,
no, I just think people have got an enduring fascination with Steve Blackman.
And I'm not just saying this because they were both MMA influenced. It's the same as Ken Shamrock.
It's the same as...
If you're in that 2-3 year window, everybody watched and everybody felt something and everybody's regurgitated the clips on channels like ours, and it's just like you just say it now, innit? You watch that clip of Steve Blackman knocking Shane McMahon off the truss, you watch a Lions Den match, you watch him booting like a bin on someone's head or whatever, and it looks cool, like the Brawl Friday.
One thing or another.
An abysmal promo. Terrible. Like,
great entrance though.
Great entrance, great tune.
Yeah,
great theme.
And a great birthday he's got, is what I've heard.
Nice. Just Steve Blackman, isn't he? Yeah. Good for him, I say.
Good for him. Davey Spurs says, Sami Zayn massively overrated. Haha. No. I think he's perfectly rated, is at a level that is ridiculous, and every wrestler would just snap your hand off to be designated like this. He is universally adored. He's had his legacy and his money years. Like, he's not the same as El Generico doing those diving suicide tornado DDTs. You know, I mean, the guy was insane. The brain busters, like the ladder wars and all the rest of it. Like, he was athletically and like this explosive dude. He's not that anymore. But, and this is what kind of makes me think someone like Finn Balor's overrated compared to him. He is so much better at eliciting emotion. I think he's throughout El Generico to Sami Zayn, just the perfect 21st century babyface. Maybe I'm skewed because I have what you don't. That is that WWE veneer where there are certain characters and wrestlers I simply can't enjoy as much because they're in WWE, the way they're presented. Sami Zayn is one of the few where it's like, I just love watching him. He's amazing.
Yeah, Sami Zayn and
his promos, man, are so great. Like the one he cut on Drew, sorry to step on your dick. The one he cut on Drew is like saying, you're bitter and you don't want to come to work and all the rest of it. Like, think of what these people are sacrificed. I mean, it's common gardener stuff, but he's amazing at it.
Oh, he's brilliant. And you say it's common garden stuff, but that's the problem, isn't it? Like, because it's common garden stuff, nobody gets it over. And Sami Zayn gets it over. Every comparison to Sami Zayn, when you're making kind comparisons, I suppose if somebody here doesn't like him, that might be different. But whenever you're making kind comparisons with Sami Zayn to anybody, they're always accurate. Like, people make the Mick Foley one all the time, and it's accurate. Insert favourite wrestler here, compare it to Sami Zayn's work as El Generico or maybe the early days of NXT. They're accurate. He is living up to your compliments, Sami Zayn. Yeah. I think he's underrated because...
If anything, under.
And him and Kevin Owens, in the most unlikeliest of stories, are two of the 5... Don't ask me for the list off the top of my head. Most important wrestlers of WWE's last 10 years. They've both been around WWE 10 years now. Like, not everybody has 10 years in WWE. So that in itself puts them above, right? Unlikely in the sense that up until Triple H gets the book of WWE, they're even getting runs full stop, let alone prosperous runs, let alone successful runs. And there was success before Triple H took over. It's only just been enhanced because we always say them two game the system. It's not that anymore. They're just used to their skills. Like, we are kinda two wrestlers that did substantially less in WWE than Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens.
Yeah.
Work rate wise, promo wise, drawing ability wise.
Yeah. Like Sami Zayn, Jesus Christ, those numbers on the chase for Roman were pretty absurd.
Yeah. Like, and yet the manner in which you could have the very sort of, for a change in wrestling, diplomatic conversation about why it still couldn't be him and it could be Cody, and yet know that Sami Zayn was going to be all right and come out of it smelling of roses as well. And he did. Like, they both main evented WrestleMania 23 on night 1 and night 2. Like, again, speaks to Zayn's like enduring appeal, because a lot of wrestlers would have taken that loss and never recovered from it. Like a February pay-per-view loss. Yeah. Different company, different time. But like 2015, Bryan loses to Roman and he's in the Intercontinental title ladder match at WrestleMania. And people loved Bryan Danielson, but it's like, out of the way, it's the Roman time now, whether they want it or not. It wasn't going to happen to Sami Zayn, was it?
He's got that.
Him and Owens, I think, are underrated because we need to be talking about them in a like, they're an Austin Rock of a different kind. But you don't get that anymore. John Cena broke it all.
Yeah.
You do not get Austin and Rock. Cody and Roman are not Austin and Rock. You know, it's simply monoculture.
What are you getting at here?
What I'm getting at is that Austin and Rock will be held up aloft as all-timers, but there will never be a landscape with which a wrestler can be an Austin or Rock anymore. And I say that loving this WWE, and loving Cody Rhodes, and loving Roman Reigns. They're not Austin and Rock. Austin and Rock are zeitgeist, pop culture megastars. They're Hulk Hogan. It's Hulk Hogan. It's The Rock and Austin. That'll never happen again. The culture is too scattered. Like WWE, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, in a broken system, then in a fixed one, have achieved things that The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin achieved together. They just haven't done it with like crossover mainstream appeal. But I would wager that Sami Zayn, given extended runs, does move numbers, does sell pay-per-views, does sell merchandise. Kevin Owens, as both a heel and as babyface, does move merchandise, does sell tickets, does make fans forever. But we simply don't talk about them on the same level because WWE can't be this sort of like cultural monolith in the way it was for Hogan, in the way it was for Rock and Austin. You have to try and analyze it differently now. And Zayn and Owens, What's a better comparison then? Like Brett and Shawn. Like people say Brett and Shawn are here's me, and I'm saying
You're a Brettsman.
I'm a Brettsman, I'm a Shawnsman, I'm a New Generationsman, and I think we probably have to say that like
we have to now after the WrestleMania.
Zayn Owens have done loads more.
After the WrestleMania.
And they'll never be held up in that regard ever.
Maybe not loads, but they're above them. They're above them.
And they'll never be talked about like that.
No, they probably should. Sami Zayn has got that. I know he's played heel in WWE, but he's got that Ricky Steamboat enduring babyface. He's got those work rate classics, for lack of a less completely lame word, and he's got that top star boom.
I've thrown it with Rock and Austin
quality. So he's got those three massive things going for him.
Brett and Shawn and Orton and Batista. And maybe Randy Savage, maybe.
No, Savage is 89. He's got WrestleMania 5.
Savage did sort of penetrate.
Savage has got 89. And he's crossover. He was in movies.
They're doing it for loads longer. They were talking 20-odd year careers at this point.
Yeah, but Savage
10 of which in WWE at the highest level. I don't think people, this is what I'm saying, I don't think people hold present day WWE or any WWE post 2000. They should do now, but they don't hold it in as high regard. It's just not held up in the same way. And as a result, Savage had he had
that really, that 88 and that 89 run, when he's probably as big as Hogan.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? In the Hogan's Hogan.
Yeah, you have that moment, and I'm absolutely not discounting that. But if we're talking exclusively WWE, if you take away the years in the Outlaw promotions and then the follow-up in WCW, which was hit and miss.
Yeah.
When it hit, it really hit, but there was a lot of miss for Savage in WCW as well. We're going 85 to 94. That's a 9-year run with a 1-year top guy. One of those 9 years was top guy. The rest was it's Randy Savage. He's one of the very, very best. But they're going to go longer. They're going to go longer. They're going to do more.
We don't know that yet. We don't know that yet. And they've had 2 or 3 years, but they had a lot of years under Vince where it's they didn't exist. Everything's fine. Doing some good work despite things.
Is that not almost every wrestler apart from John Cena under Vince?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying though. It doesn't really, you know what I mean? It could be, they're kind of interchangeable. So I don't think it does anything for their grand legacy compared to a Savage or a Brett, you know?
And
we'll get through a few more.
Go on, yeah. This is me arguing just how underrated they are.
Yeah. Sami Zayn, probably more so than Kevin for me. Probably more so than Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens is just... Anyway, we'll do 3 more quite quickly before they got to record at WrestleCulture.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I'm going to do this quite quick as well. Zach asked for Yota Tsuji. I'm going to go with overrated. He's still got lots of years left. I think Yota Tsuji's overrated. He's not amazing at anything. He just happens to have a certain magnetism that people might want to pump up as more than it is because they desperately wanted to like New Japan more.
Agree. New Japan are fumbling around in the dark for what is going to make their stars. And I'm not seeing it out of Yota Tsuji, but I think, to be fair to him, I don't think they have defined what it is now. Do you know what I mean? It's not really anybody now.
He's the best of the rest, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's the best of the rest for me anyway.
And he did catch that ice bag.
He did catch that. He's obsessed with
Which
this.
I am going to talk about.
It's like Wilborn Shayna Baszler.
Until the day I die, I'm going to talk about ice. I went to look for it, and obviously New Japan had taken the footage down.
Yeah,
of course.
Couldn't say
You'll not find the Twitter accounts.
Oh, great. The coolest thing you've ever done. Sound.
You'll never see it again. Unless you subscribe to New Japan World, of course. 2 more. Muttley asks Orange Cassidy, and I just wanted to say one thing. If anything, I think Orange Cassidy's probably underrated. I'm not talking about bad faith critics, the people who know. I still think amongst those, he's probably underrated. One of the things I want to point out about Orange Cassidy very quickly, because this is meant to be rapid fire, is I think his character was almost too effective in defining him as an in-ring talent, in that obviously what works about it is the juxtaposition of this aloof slacker who in the heat of the battle starts to care and fire up. What a great bit. It works every time. I think his selling is so awesome that he almost does himself a disservice as someone who's so great at selling and firing up as a proper babyface by having, I'm the juxtaposition guy. I think he's just great at babyface professional wrestling without it being a shock that he does it under the guise of the character. Am I making any sense?
Yeah, I get that. I agree too. I actually think he's underrated because probably 3 times he's not been pushed in line with how over he was. And I wish just once AEW had committed with him to find it as a world champion like talisman.
Right, he should have failed up this time last year.
Yeah, to find out if he was like, if he has a run and he's not the guy, we can say, you know what? No, he wasn't underrated all along. He just wasn't that guy. But he's never been given the opportunity to find that out. So for me, he'll probably perennially underrated, and he's getting on a bit now. He's like sort of. It took him a long time to become a TV character, so that kind of hides his age a little bit.
Here's something I know it's meant to go rapid fire. I've only got one more left, and it's a one-word comedy answer for me. With Orange Cassidy, do you think, right, because he had the feud of this year with Mox and it wasn't great, and maybe last year's final bit of, he's been stigmatized as an upper mid-carder, that wouldn't have helped him on this go around, neither would the fact that he's Mox's first title defense. So it's obvious he's not going to win, and that doesn't help people get behind the character either. Another thing that doesn't help is that AEW is really cold. I don't think his promos in that Mox program and in the way he carried himself did him anywhere near any favors. There's so many talents in AEW where you think, who's going to be in that mix? Who can make themselves undeniable? Right now, it's Ospreay and Kenny. Maybe even Ospreay more, and I'll say that as someone who loves Kenny. I don't think Cassidy's promos in the build to that Full Gear match did him any favors in terms of, I'll go back to Orange Cassidy. I wouldn't go back to him for ages. I think he was really sort of bad.
I agree, but I think they were making a choice to sacrifice a lot of the integrity of that character, and they made it at the wrong time for the wrong story. If you finally give Orange Cassidy's emotions away at a time when he's 10 times more over, coming off just losing that international title, you might stand a chance of making that mean more. Orange Cassidy's getting serious.
And he's believes in it more because he's earned it.
He's getting serious against the Death Riders.
Yeah.
You've cashed those chips with Orange Cassidy at the exact wrong time against the wrong man.
No, I think there's something to that as well, genuinely. Last one, Chris asks, Billy Gunn, overrated, Hamflett?
Yeah. Like always as well.
Why do people like him so much in AEW? I know that it's gone now. It's dead. It's dead at last. Why did people love him so much at the time?
It's the Ken Shamrock, Steve Blackman phenomenon. Jim Ross said for 2 years straight he was the best pure athlete in the WWE, and a few people wanted him to be the guy that ran over Steve Austin. Like,
does that inform this AEW Twilight Years thing?
It's informed absolutely everything. Like, nobody watched him in TNA be rubbish for the most of the time. Everyone likes nostalgia. Nobody cared that the Outlaws were kind of dump in the mid-2010s for WWE because not that many people were invested in any of it.
Yeah.
So it's just like, it's Billy Gunn. He's still kicking around. It's a novelty that he's got some sons. Like, I have liked on occasion some Billy Gunn, but like, the Smoking Guns arrived in 1993.
No one remembers the Smoking Guns. That's not why they like him, sadly.
That's 32 friggin' years. Like, he's a marvel physically at his age to look like that. That's incredible. Do more of them bodybuilding competitions that you're enjoying.
Get the hell out of wrestling.
I'm 2 years older than Billy Gunn's entire run you've just mentioned.
God damn.
I thought you were talking 2 years older than Billy Gunn. I was like, how old are you? What?
You should see my night creep.
Jesus Christ. I really resent the AEW fans for gassing him up as much as they did.
I tell you what,
I know you're listening, so
do they call
why did you do that to me?
Is it a coach that he's his official title backstage? He's overrated as a coach because he's used and abused his position to stay on television as a full-time wrestler.
Or he's an agent or one of the two.
Aye. That's like he makes AEW look bad by being given the freedom he's got when there's 100 gazillion wrestlers that should be getting the spot
He's
instead.
so nakedly a corny with it all as well.
Yeah.
Who does he think he is? Everyone looks affable, old Billy Gunn. Well, you're not looking at him correctly. I'm too perceptive of anything. And if you believe me when I say that, and you just want to say, you know what, Sidgwick, you are great, and I will reply to you saying thanks, you can do so on X at @MSidgwick. Follow us all at WhatCulture WWE. And please do, because it means you get to be involved in something like this. I wouldn't recommend X to anyone, realistically, but just do it for the purposes of this podcast. Whilst you're also there, you can follow Michael Hamflett at
Michael Hamflett.
WrestleCulture will be available pretty much around the same time as this. Did you preview SmackDown?
Yeah, of course.
If you want some really self-indulgent chat between Michael Hamflett and Adam Wilborn, that'll be on your feeds as well. I'm sure there'll be some news and lists on the weekend.
Yeah, that's what we do.
That's what we do. And we'll be back next week for our regular coverage. Thank you very much for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Enjoy your weekend, whatever you're doing, as long as you're not hurting anybody else. I was doing so well, and now I'm accusing people of hurting people. See you later, guys. I'll see you later.